In our last movie, we saw how to create some AJAX code that would allow a dynamic pop-up, helping the user enter a valid value. There's one problem with the script, really, and that is that it was much too specific. It was great if you always wanted to handle states, but if you ever wanted to do something else, you were going to have to change a whole lot of stuff. In this lesson, we're going to change it to handle colors instead of states, but we're also going to make it a whole lot more generic so it can be used for other things in the future. In front of you, you'll see our example. Let's say our favorite color is blue. I typed the letters BLU, and because that was the only color that started with those letters, my background is now blue. If I prefer green, I type in GRE, and now my background is green. Typing in W immediately gets me white. So let's switch over to our text editor and see how it's done. For those of you following along with the exercise files, we're looking at AJAX/chapter05/07. In this case, we're looking at the colors.xml file. This is the XML file we're going to be using for this example, and it's simply called colors.xml. Its root is colors, and then there are a number of different colors in it, each with a name and a value. In this case, name is the only thing we're going to be looking at, but we could be using value for something else if we wanted to. We're starting off with our HTML file from last time, and we're just going to change a couple of fields. I want to change it from autofill states to be autofill colors. Instead of please enter your state, I'm going to say please enter your favorite color. And I'm going to change the ID from search field to color field. And that's all that needs to be done with this HTML file. Let's move over to our CSS file. We need to change a couple of things. First off, because we've changed search field to be color field, we need to change that there, and we also need to change it here. Save that as well. And now we get on to the interesting part, which is our JavaScript. Primarily what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be setting up an assortment of variables to store the information about the XML file so that in the future it's pretty clear up front which things you're going to want to change because they'll be right up front, up top in variables. So let's make states a little more generic and we'll call it data array. Next we're going to set up a variable called form field. And that form field, we're going to set it equal in this case to be the field on the page that we're going to be paying attention to, which is called color field. And that way, if at some later point we decide to apply this JavaScript to something else, all we gotta have to do is change the one form field variable, and we don't have to go and make sure it's changed in 20 different places in our code. And next, we need a URL of the XML file, which is going to be colors.xml. So because we're going to be using form field, we can get rid of this. And so instead of a hard-coded search field, we'll now just say form field. And we'll be doing that throughout our entire script file. Next up, down here in set states array, we're going to make this more generic again and call it set data array. Instead of the hard-coded XML file here, we're just going to use the variable URL. And we scroll down a little more. Now, because we're using set data array instead of set states array, we're going to call this function set data array. And here we're having item and label, but that's not what they're called in colors.xml. So we want to make it again a little more generic. So we're going to put our values into variables so they can be more easily changed later. And in this case, we'll call them tag 1 and tag 2, or tag 1 equals color, var tag 2 equals name. A little further down, instead of all states, we want to call this now all data. And instead of item, it's now tag 1. Instead of all states, it's all data again. And instead of states array, it's going to be data array. And we keep doing that throughout the document. Here, instead of label, I'm going to call it tag 2. The one other change we're going to make is instead of setting data array sub I here to be the first child, we're going to set it equal to first child dot node value. And that way we don't need to do that later on. So we'll need to remember to take that out. Now we scroll down to search suggest function. Again, search field goes away and is turned into the form field variable. Here, I'm just going to copy this so I can use it again and paste it again there. In our loop here, instead of states array, it's called data array. And again here. And this is where we can take out node value, because we're storing the actual value that we want in data array sub I. We don't have to go looking any further for it. Now we're going to change this state to be this field. And that means we can change that not just here, but also here and here. Next change we need to make is down here, is get element by ID search field. It needs to change to form field. And we're going to make one other actual good size change now that we're almost all the way down to the end. Because these lines of code and these lines of code are almost identical, and we also want to add a tiny bit of functionality to this, I'm going to split these out into a new function called setColor. So here, instead of setting this value to this value, I'm just going to call setColor and pass it in this value. And then I can get rid of this line entirely because it's going to be further down. And I'm going to do something similar down here, which in this case actually I'm just going to copy it and paste it. And then I'm going to call setColor this div.innerHTML. Now here we are down in our new function, setColor. And the first thing we need to do is get rid of that search field and call it form field. And we need to change its value. I'm going to copy in new color. And it needs to be set to new color. So there's how we're resetting the value in our form field. And there's one last change we need to make, which is we want to say document.bgcolor also equal to new color. And that is going to change our background so that we get to see what our new color is. So now we save it, and we go back to our HTML file, and we see how that looks in our browser. So please enter your favorite color. We'll go to blue, and there we are. And if we want to set it to something else, we just say W, and that's the only color that starts with W, so we get white, or let's say pink. So that is how you make a dynamic form field using AJAX. Next up, we're going to look at some more uses of AJAX.